You're listening to ChainLeak, the crypto news podcast with your host, Joshuwa Roomsberg. Follow and subscribe today.
Welcome to the ChainLeak podcast. I'm your host, Joshuwa Roomsberg. Today's episode is about unlocking RWA potential with Mantra. Today's guest, John Patrick Mullen. Welcome to the show, brother.
Good to see you, man. We've been around for a bit. Good to see you and be back on the show.
Yeah, for sure.
Now.
Oh, right. All right. So give the listeners a quick introduction to Mantra and what you guys are doing for the industry.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, Mantra's been around for a few years now. We launched as Mantra DAO back in the DeFi summer 2020. So we've been building the DeFi space for some time. Previously had been working on the tokenization space, the regulated tokenization space. So we kind of got the best of both worlds from the more regulated side of things as well as the DeFi builder side of things. And, after kind of building out the protocol, getting listed on Binance and other major exchanges back in 2021, we've just been heads down building during the bear market, and we've been focusing on really creating this DeFi TradFi bridge for RWA assets. So we're building a Cosmos layer 1 blockchain called Mantra Chain, which is effectively a permissionless blockchain for permissioned applications that allows for RWA tokenization, customizable compliance, asset issuance and management, all in this kind of like safeguarded way that's still retail friendly and connected into the crypto space for crypto natives and degens to be able to interact very easily, but also have this kind of like more buttoned up ecosystem that they can play in as well, if that makes sense.
For an end user, if they wanted to experience what Mantra is putting together, what are the steps they would need to take to enter into the ecosystem?
Sure. Good question. So, we try to make it as simple and easy as possible, as if you're just like, interacting with any other Cosmos ecosystem asset. So you have your Kepler wallet, your Leap wallet, or Cosmos Station, whatever your wallet of choosing is. Effectively, one of the things to access like the permissioned ecosystem, because there's two parts of it, right? There's the permissionless, which anyone can access, anyone can interact with, which is kind of like the normal crypto side of things, and then the permission side, which is where you'd have the RWAs, you'd have the interactions with fiat. Obviously, all of this is done on chain still, but it's a little bit more of a regulated space. In order to kind of gain access to that, you do have to go through some sort of identifying process. So you would have to do KYC to interact with some stuff, but not everything. And in order to do that, we've created like a decentralized ID that, once you put up your information, you go through the KYC process, you can store that information on that soulbound NFT. So you only have to do it one time. You don't have to do it over and over and over again.
And then
you can
wallet,
go to all the different on-chain dApps.
Let me stop you there. Your Cosmos wallet would get an NFT that is basically your identity?
Exactly right. So like it's a decentralized ID or soulbound NFT. That means you can basically passport your KYC information everywhere. So it's like if you were going to Coinbase and you sign up, but then you can take that same information and go sign up over on Binance without having to re-upload everything.
Okay, without having to type everything in and verify it, it's all ready to go right there.
It's all ready to go right there. Make it a lot easier.
That's pretty cool. Now, in addition to Cosmos, are you guys staying with that as the main chain or infrastructure, or are you guys going multi-chain with this?
I would say I've always been, multi-chain focused. We're definitely, we're not maximalists by any stretch of the imagination. So while we are definitely core building on Cosmos, a lot of the functionality of our platform allows you to interact with all different kinds of chains. So you can interact with Ethereum, EVM compatible chains, as well as Cosmos chains. And it's kind of like you can kind of think about it in two levels, right? We got the protocol level, which is the Cosmos infrastructure. And then we have the app level. The app level is natively built on Cosmos, but the way that it's set up is you can connect all these different on-chain wallets into this, login portal. Yeah. And so you can be on all different chains as long as the protocols are live there.
Is there a way to tie that identity into multiple chains? If I have a Cosmos wallet, but that wallet supports a variety of layer 2s, can I link that same identity to all of them layer 2s? Is that possible?
Great question. So it is possible. It's something that we're working on. We're exploring a few different kind of like I guess like kind of cross-chain messaging platforms as well as like kind of data availability
Yep.
ecosystems. I won't
Okay.
drop any names just yet, but there's a few of the big ones that have been, the modular ones that have been hyped recently that we're talking
Yep.
to kind of explore some of this stuff, which would be really cool because then, like you said, you can passport your compliance and your KYC across all different kind of ecosystems and chains.
Because that'd be cool too, with that as the back end of the infrastructure, somehow have one wallet as your identifier in the blockchain industry when you want to go that route with different aspects of dApps, different
100%.
applications that you have to log into for everything to be right there. Because I know when you go to an exchange, every single exchange asks for 20 different questions. You have to type that in every single time. So for having an identity verification method like this, I think that's really unique.
And it also actually adds even more functionality because when there is some sort of identifying information present, then you can also connect your on-chain, world or your on-chain activities with things like your bank account very easily, with things like brokerage accounts, investment portfolios, all different type of stuff. So it actually is like making this ecosystem of moving on and off chain very easy.
Yeah, no, that sounds crazy. Because while you were just saying that, I was thinking about different social media platforms would be able to implement this and verify who you are. You could also do that
Exactly.
with a variety of games. If you wanted to link your PlayStation to your identity, you'd be able to do that in Xbox, PC games. There's a lot of different ways to where verifying who you are could be simplified by using this type of technology.
100%. I mean, it's not just for DeFi. It is across all different spectrums. 100%.
Yeah. So what do you feel is the biggest difference between permissioned and permissionless when it comes to Mantra?
I mean, I think so. The way I kind of explain Mantra in a nutshell to people who are just kind of getting an understanding of the industry and an understanding of our brand is to think of it as a internationally focused Coinbase that is on chain from day one, where Mantra the exchange is kind of like Coinbase the exchange, and Mantra chain is kind of like base chain.
Okay.
And we kind of really do align ourselves with them. Coinbase has base chain, which is permission chain for permissionless applications. We like to say Mantra chain is a permissionless chain because we built on the Cosmos SDK for permissioned applications. And what that means is, we want to have anyone be able to interact with the ecosystem. Anyone want to be able to interact with the token, the blockchain, whatever. But we do also understand that there is an area where you need to have, proper AML, proper KYC, proper permissioning to make sure you're, compliant with relevant rules and regulations in specific jurisdictions. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be still doing everything on chain, right? So we kind of really try to focus on making it very easy for the crypto natives and the users on the permissionless side to interact with the permission side, but it's not forced. So you don't have to do KYC to interact with the ecosystem. You could have a permissionless app and a permissioned app that do pretty much the same thing on the same ecosystem, on the same chain. That's the idea.
So when I think about that, what are some examples of permissioned applications versus permissionless?
Good question. So, I mean, like any DeFi primitive, right? You could have a permissioned versus a permissionless. We will have permissionless DEXs where anyone can deploy pools, anyone can deploy assets, anyone can do whatever. And we'll have permissioned apps and DEXs where someone would have to basically, someone meaning the operator would have to permission the pools. Yeah, the developer would have to permission which pools get access, would have to permission who can trade, which assets can be listed, kind of thing. Yeah. So for certain assets, permissionless is probably more than fine. But for some, permissioned is a requirement, and particularly that comes into when you're talking about like RWAs, because in many cases those are a little bit more regulated assets.
That was the next angle I was going to go into, are the real world assets, RWAs. When you think about real world assets, what types of assets are you guys looking to bring on chain?
I mean, everything under the sun, to be to be completely honest.
Okay.
Um, we're starting in a few different areas, just probably because of where we have some more interesting connections.
Okay.
One of the ones that we're heavily looking at is real estate tokenization.
Yep.
Honestly, it's not my favorite. I think there's cooler assets to tokenize, but in the region that we're operating in the UAE and some with the connections that we have, it's just one of the hottest ones to look at right now from an asset perspective.
Yep.
I think also, VC and PE, so private equity and venture capital funds. A lot of retail investors would never be able to get exposure to these type of instruments, these type of assets. And in
Yep.
this way, we can actually tokenize that and get exposure. Maybe you could get exposure to an A16Z fund or something like that, or Paradigm, or Pantera, or one of these things. And obviously that could be tokenized on chain that you could get access to. So
Now,
there's a lot of it that you can do.
circling back, you just mentioned these different asset managers. That would be a permissioned application. You would have to run that through.
Most likely that would be permissioned. But I think the way that again we've kind of developed it is that just because it's permissioned doesn't mean that you can't get liquidity elsewhere on that asset. And what I mean by that is,
Okay.
if you have the reason one of the reasons we chose Cosmos is because of IBC, right? So
Okay.
you could IBC a lot of these tokens out into the Cosmos to do other things. But in order to come back and get the exposure to the underlying, you got to come back into the walled garden permission side of things, right? So the idea is
Okay.
that if you're attaching a token to a real world asset, a real world thing, there's only certain places where you can redeem for that real world thing,
And
and you have
that's
to do
what
that
would
in the
need to be
environment.
permissioned.
Exactly,
Okay.
100%.
So the
Like if you go to
redeemability has to be permissioned.
exactly, like we need to know who's redeeming it.
Yep.
You know what I mean, right?
Right.
Like for example, if you talk about a house, right? If you have someone random who's holding a token, and then they try to go say, "Hey, oh, I have this token," and they're like, "Well, I don't know who the hell you are." It won't
Right.
work. But if you come back and you say, "Okay, I went through the process. I know who you actually are. My house token is eligible for this redemption," and then you can do that.
When you think about the potential for tokenizing real world assets, are there any other types of assets that Mantra is looking into right now?
Yeah, for sure. So on a AMA I did the other day, we talked a little bit about some of the art partnerships that we're working on.
Okay.
And I think fractionalization of art is a cool idea, particularly for some of the pieces that you'd never be able to buy in totality yourself, right? Like most people
Right.
can't afford to buy a Picasso or a Damien Hirst or whatever, right?
Yep.
So the idea of fractionalizing that and then bringing additional liquidity to that asset class and giving access to people is a pretty cool one. So we've actually even been toying around the idea of like airdropping an entire piece of art to a bunch of people, which would be kind of cool. So like you could think of airdropping a Picasso on someone,
That'd be
which would be
crazy.
which would be cool. Yeah.
Right. So when you think about those types of assets and even the real estate aspect, do
Hmm.
you personally feel it's better to fractionalize more or less when it comes to the token side?
Um,
Like, is
so I
more
think
users a better move or less to have a more direct impact?
I think it depends on the asset, like a little bit on
Okay.
the explicitly on the specific asset, right? Like, do you need 100,000 owners of a commercial real estate property? Probably
Right.
not. But could you kind of take like maybe some sort of like really nice apartment and fractionalize that, give a little bit of ownership to people, but then also give it as like a utility of using it as a timeshare, for example,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Like that could be cool to have 10,000 people holding the token. Whereas
Yep.
like, do you need 10,000 people to hold some warehouse? I mean, maybe only
Right.
because you want to get it in, maybe only because you want the yield, right? That's fine. But like the cool part of it, I think, is when you can actually make it a little bit more like tangible in the real world, not just purely financial. You got to have
Right.
both sides, I guess.
Have you guys worked with any physical product manufacturers yet? Have you looked into that aspect of tokenizing assets?
Not yet, but I mean there are a lot of use cases for like one of our investors is trying to connect us into like supply chain logistics and stuff, but that's
Yep.
a little bit further down the line.
Okay.
I think that the ones that we're heavily focused on right now is real estate, art, VCP, and then a little bit, like treasuries and stuff like that.
Okay. Because I was thinking, I seen something, and I don't know if it was just an example, but Nike tokenizing shoes or Adidas tokenizing their apparel. Different things like that are other ways where things can be tokenized as well. And I don't know necessarily if that's verification of ownership or if it would be to own if you had the last pair of Kobe's and you wanted to fractionalize that, would you have to go directly through Nike or could you do that personally? Them are the types of questions I think about.
You could probably do something like that personally, to be honest.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously, if you have a partner like Nike, then even better. I mean, I think collectibles is not a bad thing to tokenize, but I think the trick is like, so we had this interesting debate at the office last week. Like, if you're having these liquidity pools, because obviously, like tokenizing anything is the easy part, bringing liquidity to it is the hard part.
Right.
You need to kind of segment the liquidity pools by almost by asset type or category a little bit, because
Okay.
like if you can imagine that you're trading, it says use Pokemon cards, that's the collectible.
Yep.
You have a really rare Charizard or something, right?
Yep.
And then that's trading against like a U.S. Treasury bill. Most people are probably going to say, okay, I actually value the Treasury a lot more than the Charizard, so they're going to
Right.
dump their freaking Charizards and take out the T-bills, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have like-minded or like similar type of assets together.
Okay.
Otherwise, it becomes a little bit silly, and it could be abused.
Okay. I understand that. Now, going into the mantra ecosystem as a whole, I read something about guard modules. Can we talk about
Yep.
that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of designed the guard module on the chain to be like a customable compliance SDK. So this
Okay.
allows developers to be able to easily build compliance into their protocols. And what I mean by that is that it effectively gives customizable permissioning that you can say, okay, this asset can be interacted with by blah, 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 this set of rules,
Yeah.
or not, right? So you can do it at the wallet level, the token level, the pool level, the product level. And then you can effectively do like attribute-based whitelisting where, you plug in these different attributes and say, okay, this is, good to go and this is not good to go. And then it reads it at the smart contract level and allows interaction or doesn't allow interaction. This basically is kind of it's meant to be two-sided. And what I mean by that is
Okay.
it allows Web3 native developers to easily build compliance into their, Web3 applications.
Yep.
Because maybe they don't have that, background. They don't want to do all that work.
Right.
So they can just plug it in super easy. And then on the Web 2 side, for more like traditional companies, fintechs, whatever, who don't know the crypto blockchain side of things, this allows them to create the back end compliance side on chain very easily as well. So you can kind of get it from both angles.
If I were a developer building out using the Mantra SDK, is there a way to pick and choose which parts of the permissioned identity that I would require?
Absolutely, 100%. So some could require more, some could require less. And that's
Right.
actually a very good question because it isn't a one size fits all, right? So in some cases, you might have like 95% of the information already there, but you might require a little bit extra.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, because I was thinking about different types of applications on your mobile. They require different amounts of information depending on what type of application it is. If it's a social media, it's usually a phone number and an email and a name. If it's a banking institution, you have to fill out an actual form. So that's what I was trying to get at there with what types of identity would have to be verified.
Absolutely.
Is there another aspect of Mantra that we haven't already discussed?
I mean, I would say as I mentioned earlier, the two main parts are this protocol level and the app level. And I think one of the things that really drew us to the Cosmos ecosystem is that kind of like app chain thesis. We want to be a very application-centric protocol, meaning that we effectively built the chain for our app, but we believe that there's other people who would basically want to have the same requirements because, building this type of application on chain is hard.
Right.
We feel like regulation is applied at the application level, not the protocol level. They're not necessarily coming after the protocols for certain things other than how they issue tokens. But not for the tech component in many cases, right? So we feel like we've really done our research and homework on this side, and that comes from basically building since we met each other, and understanding the space on both the DeFi and the TradFi side, for years now.
With helping other projects get into this space, how does that work? Do the partnerships blossom into this type of thing, or is it a service fee? How do other networks and projects get involved with identity verification?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things that's actually we're heavily part of the token incentives can come into play, right? So, obviously we want to incentivize people to create wallets that are verified. We want to incentivize people to verify the wallets. So there's token components that can help, that action, that economic incentive. But I think on the other side, it is a heavily partnership driven model where we need to have institutional companies and players come in and you actually get to work on both angles here because you have the crypto native side of partnerships, which is, awesome. And then you have the Web 2, TradFi kind of side of partnerships, which definitely is a little bit of a different game. But fortunately we have real good connections on both angles and both sides. So it's actually kind of interesting that we're able to kind of have two different partnership teams or two different people because they have a different, they wear a different hat.
When you think about Mantra building out on other chains, how do you incorporate a chain that is not an EVM chain? Something like Solana that has a totally different address sequence than what you see with normal EVM chains.
Yeah, so we're working with different multi-chain bridges, right? And this will allow us to effectively kind of do cross-chain communication across all these different ecosystem chains. There's a few in the Cosmos ecosystem that are heavily relevant, like Wormhole's a big one. Skip Money is a big one. They have this thing called Squid Router. So I mean, we're not building it ourselves. Let's put it that way. But we're definitely heavily focused on the cross-chain, communication capabilities, not just in the Cosmos.
Another thing I was just thinking about is having the ability to have identity verification on Solana. Would that be something that would have to be built on Solana itself? Or would you be able to use your identity from Mantra on Solana in the future?
You could. We're working on that idea of passportable identity for sure. So you could take that data stack of identity and passport it for sure. That's
what I was trying to figure out. Would it be bridging that NFT, or would it be multiplying, creating a new NFT with that same information on each chain? What would that look like?
I think it's the latter. Where you're sharing the credentials and information and then minting a new representation of that.
Just multiplying it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds crazy because if you guys can get to that point where there are 20 main chains that you can take this information and move it all around from.
Oh yeah.
I think that could help Mantra in the future.
Couldn't agree more. We're looking at it heavily. You're on the right track, man. I can't say too much on that one, but yeah, you're on the right track.
Yeah, no, that sounds incredible. So to conclude the interview today, is there anything else you would like to add? Would you like to tell them the website, Twitter account, where they can find more about Mantra and get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, follow us on Twitter. I think that's where we are mainly active. Mantra_chain. We've done our first phase of the testing on the chain, and we're going to be launching the next one, which is actually going to be an incentivized testnet for people to participate, earn some extra rewards. We're going to have a lot of dApps deployed there. So make sure to come and check that out. hop in the Telegram, hop in the Discord if you got questions. We're always available. I'm always available too. So, hit me up on X if you want. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. I really, really enjoyed it. Good catching up again.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. To circle back on that, you mentioned the testnet. Do you have a firm date on that yet?
So I believe we're going to be announcing we're announcing the testnet interest form this week. So you can be the first one to talk about that one. But I believe we're going to be in within the next few weeks is when it's going to fully launch, roughly. Yeah, pretty soon.
Well, I appreciate you being here today. This has been Mantra, unlocking RWA potential. Have a good day, brother.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it.